Thank you, and thanks for that kind introduction. It's great to be here at this Veterans Day, 11/11/11. And it's the first time in 25 years I've not given a veteran speech. However, we're talking a little bit about leadership today and all the veterans who served our country, them and their families that guarantee the freedoms that we have, and especially in our democracy. It's also great to be back on the college campus after I left Congress in this January. I had the honor of serving as a fellow at the John F. Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University, where I taught classes on investigation as chairman of the Oversight Investigations Committee in the House of Representatives. I certainly enjoyed being on college campus and spending 5-6 months with students. And now I'm a partner with the Venable Law Firm in Washington. A lot of people ask me, why did I go to Venable Law Firm in Washington, D.C.? Like most law firms I interviewed at, I like the people, I respected the individuals that I would be working with. But what set Venable apart, as part of my background, is their philanthropic philosophy. Venable gives back to the communities in which we have offices. And also they encourage us to work on a pro bono basis for the DC Poverty Law Center. And it's a center where I've spent a little bit of time and picked up some cases. I've found a couple of students trying to work with a legal case with a person who's a homeless person that presents unique challenges. But Venable allows me to do that, and they're very generous with their time to work on cases like this. And also, they were great about having me be here today. But after 20 years in political office, I can't express to you how nice it is to be here and not have to report this trip to the Ethics Committee. Before everything we did was had to go before the Ethics Committee, had to be pre-approved. It was a lot of forms to fill out, so I'm pleased to be here and not have to report to the Ethics Committee. Now, if we could only get the Democrats, the Republicans, and President Obama to agree on a financial package which would move this country forward, we'd be better off as a country. But as we also know, the whole world would be better off. I've been asked to speak about leadership and developing consensus in a partisan world. And having spent, like I said, a term in the Michigan legislature and 18 years in the U.S. Congress, I find it to be a very, very challenging and interesting question. Now, the question doesn't mean that America is totally absent of leaders. We have many leaders. Nor does it imply that I'm a great leader of any great stature. Rather, it's a reflection of what we see in America today. If you take a look at the current anger and frustration that the American people feel is reflected and evident by the 84% disapproval of Congress. 89% of the American people don't trust the federal government to make the right decisions to move our country forward. And we see a constant deterioration of the president's job performance. But I really believe that the corrupting influence of unchecked political contributions, the current 9% unemployment, our stagnant economic situation we find ourselves in, our economy is just stagnant, are really providing fodder for movements like the Tea Party and the Occupy Wall Street movement. And at times, too, I get so frustrated, I sort of want to jump back in the political fray, but I don't think we need another political voice. What I really believe we need in Washington and throughout this country and the state of Michigan is some true leadership. And I see leadership as being exemplified in honesty, integrity, faith, and courage. We need true statesmanship. We need legislators who will fight hard for what they believe in and dedicate their lives to public service. We need legislators who realize that with public service, there is great personal sacrifice as we strive to improve the lives of others. We need leaders who possess the courage and determination to persevere through both success and failure, tragedy and triumph. We need true public servants who will lead by example, not by public opinion polls. We need leaders who possess a strong moral compass to guide them along the way and keep them well-grounded as they debate legislation. We need leaders who are honest and humble, not arrogant or flamboyant. I was fortunate enough to grow up in a time when we had several leaders who were very strong leaders, yet humble leaders who became heroes of mine. We start with my father, who was a small-town politician. We start with Governor Bill Milliken, governor for us in the 70s. And we had two great U.S. senators who all played a role in molding my political philosophy. Each of these statesmen influenced me and guided me through my 20 years of elected office. Here are some of the lessons that I learned and that have helped mold me through my political career and in my personal life. And I hope it will help you. First of all, don't make promises you can't keep. Second, your word is your bond. When you leave public service, leave with the dignity you came in with. There are no bad votes in Congress, just poorly explained votes. You learn more from a loss than you ever learned from a victory. And it's not victory at all costs. Always leave your opponent with his or her dignity. Never sign pledges, political contracts, or oaths. The only oath necessary is the one you take in the United States when you enter upon office. I ran for Congress to do what I believe was in the best interest of our country, not what was politically popular. Unfortunately, many elected officials all say this. I'm running because I'm running to change things, to make it a better country. But things change once you're elected. They become more concerned about self-preservation than serving their country or their constituents. For example, I was invited to the White House along with the newly elected Democratic freshman in 1993. President Clinton was also newly elected along with Vice President Ford, and they were attempting to convince us to support the President's controversial deficit reduction plan, much like we're hearing a lot about today. We listened to all the arguments of why we should vote for the package, but many of my colleagues still did not want to vote for it. They were afraid that if they voted for it, it would be targeted in the next election because there was raising of taxes in that package. I addressed the group and told them how my wife and I, Lori, had talked about the President's plan and that I was leaning towards voting for it, even though it had the unpopular British thermal unit, the energy tax, the BTU tax as we call it. And also I had many personal reasons to vote against it, especially when I looked at my district. The Clinton administration, which just came into office, was closing the last military base left in my district. It was cutting the Coast Guard cutter Mackinac out of the budget. The new NOAA weather station was not going to be built in northern Michigan. And no Democrat from my district had ever served consecutive terms. I was most likely close to the last election anyway. But I studied the package, and I really believe that it was in the best interest of our country to vote for it. So, if I lost my election over it, so be it. I came to D.C. to do what was in the best interest of the country and not what was politically popular. The next day, after I gave all the talk, we had our vote, there was a small article that appeared in the Washington Post, and it said, "Freshman brings down the House." Well, we passed the President's package that day by one vote. It went to the Senate with a tie vote, and then Vice President Al Gore broke the vote. And then we're on our way to a very robust economy in the 1990s. But I learned from that experience when I was a young freshman in 1993 in Congress, and they stayed with me throughout my political career. Number one, that even with no reporters in the room, the press always gets the story. The President's plan really was very unpopular. I quickly became the #1 target for defeat in 1994 by Republicans, and the BTU tax, the British Thermal Unit, that did not mean British Thermal Unit, it meant Bart taxes you, BTU. And that was actually true for a handful of citizens in northern Michigan, making more than $180,000 a year. Their taxes went up. But at the same time, those families who made less money, lower income people, 35,000 of them got a tax reduction because of the increase in the earned income tax credit. So, whether it was my refusal to vote for the impeachment of President Clinton, my vote on the gun show loophole to close it, my vote against the war in Iraq, or my very controversial vote on the health care bill, I've always voted for what I thought and believed was in the best interest of the country. Now, political pundits and political people will tell you those were really bad votes, because it did definitely cost me support in my congressional district from key constituents. But I didn't consider them bad votes